So welcome to the December 14th, that's hard to believe already, 2023 Inspiring Author Conversations. I'm Kathy Davis, Davis Creative Publishing. Today we'll be speaking with Lisa McFadden about strategies for breaking out of writer's block. But before we welcome Lisa, I do want to remind you of a few logistics. The call is being recorded. You'll receive a link to the YouTube video within about 48 hours by Monday. After this call. Your attendance at these meetings serves as your permission to be seen in the recordings. Please mute yourself on your end. You'll find that button down at the bottom on your screen. Please type your questions into the chat box. I'll be watching for those questions and make sure that those get answered. With a group about this size, we can always just bring you on live and have you talk with Lisa. We promise to end the call around noon or 12:15 shortly thereafter, so we can all get back to business. Our theme this year has been growing your business by the book. Each month, we welcome guests who inspire authors by sharing knowledge, new ideas, opportunities, and wisdom. Help me welcome Lisa McFadden. She's a writer, filmmaker, writing coach. She helps writers overcome their inner critics so they can reach their writing goals. Welcome, Lisa. Thank you for being here.
Sure. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So I know our topic is breaking out of writer's block. Maybe that's a good place to start.
Sure.
What kinds of, tell us a little bit about the writings that you get involved with, and what do you do to get yourself out of that writer's block?
I think the biggest piece of it that I've learned over time is in helping others get over their own writer's block is first of all, if you find yourself in writer's block, you may be focusing on the outcome instead of the actual task at hand. And then secondly is that writers, like I created my own setup beforehand of warming up, doing a warm up session. And that's just the same kind of thinking as I'm not going to just like go start running. Like I would warm up, I'm going to stretch, I'm going to, like make sure everything's loose and ready to go. And a lot of the time, you can simply do prompts, you can just doodle, you can do Julia Cameron's morning pages. I journal. And it's a way of like finding yourself into what you're writing. And then another piece that I've heard a lot from authors is that they will, and I've been doing this too, and it really works, is breaking off in the middle of something from one writing session so that you know what you're going to tackle the next day. Like you
Have a clean break.
Right. Instead of like, okay, I'm going to finish this chapter today, you would just like write 3/4 of the chapter or write half of the chapter so that when you sit down the next day, you're not facing a blank page. Like you've had time to overnight even to like let it simmer, and you're just like, oh, I know what comes next. So that you create that sort of, I don't know, that inspirational energy. And then you'll just sit down, you do your warm up, which I still think you should do a warm up before you start, and then get into it. And, it's off to the races. I mean, I've personally broken through all of my issues that I was having. And then, all the writers that I talk to, they all have like
their
certain,
own. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I know we
These are
have
all different.
several writers on the call today. If anybody wants to jump in, if you've got a special thing that you do to help move yourself out of writer's block, feel free just to unmute yourself and hop in and join the conversation here.
Yeah.
And if not, then we'll just keep rolling. Awesome. And so when you're writing, and I know you help, tell us a little bit about the kind of people and projects that you work on where you're helping other writers.
So generally, when I'm helping other writers, they're doing the work. We set like a weekly goal. Okay, what are you gonna work on this week? And that could be just a task of like, oh, I need to just practice warming up before I sit down to write, or I need to find out what my writing process is and work through that. Um, or just like helping them get through whatever story problems that they're having. But usually we do it week by week so that we're not focused on the overall outcome. Sure, everybody has a goal they want to reach, but in order to reach that goal, we really need to focus on what's happening right now. So, and then, you go away, you do what you need to do, and then we meet again and talk about what worked, what didn't work. Um, did you get stuck? Did you stop? Now, and then we work through like, I just thought of this. We work through your personal guilt. So I know because I've done it. So I know when people are telling me stories like, well, yeah, I worked every day and, or whatever, and they didn't because they're afraid to admit it. And if you can't admit it to yourself, it's just not going to happen. You're not going to break through. It's not about admitting it to me, it's admitting it to yourself that it's okay if you're not a writer who writes every day. I'm not a writer who writes on my single story every single day. Like that's just, I've learned a lot in the past of what has to happen and just that's how it is. So it's a lot of us working together to figure that out for you. Because I think a lot of the time we're trying to work in a way that somebody told us it's supposed to happen. We see somebody else who's really successful and we're like, oh, I'm gonna just mimic their situation and that's going to work for me, and then we get disappointed when it doesn't and we just like bring it back on ourselves like, oh, I'm a failure, I can't do it, I'm never going to be successful because I can't write every day like they do. And it's really a matter of like learning, and that's what we're doing together is learning what your signature process is, the way you work individually. And it can take a long time, but essentially what I'm helping you do is learn to be okay with who you are as a writer and allowing for that to come through.
Mm-hmm.
And not don't be disappointed if you're not a writer who writes every day,
Yeah.
or you're a writer who has to like, I know people that do this. They take off work and they burn through it. Like they just like take a long weekend, hide in a hotel or get an Airbnb or whatever, and just like blaze through whatever story it is just to get it out because they know that that's what they have to do. But it's really just us figuring out what it is that you have to do. Like, does that work for you? Do you have to write at midnight? Do you need to write at 5:30 in the morning? Which I'm very disappointed to tell you that that kind of works.
In that
The whole
deadline.
getting up
Yeah.
early, oh my god, I hate it. Oh, it's terrible. I'm horrible. Look, it's
And
what? It's 11:45. I'm still drinking coffee.
yeah.
So,
Well, and I have to have total silence. Some people, I've heard writers say that, they have to have music in the background or they like to go sit in a coffee shop. I would not, I'd have too many distractions. I would not be able to do that. Yeah. So how did you move from writing books to writing screenplays?
well, I actually, let's see, I was writing poetry,
Uh-huh.
then I wrote screenplays,
Gotcha.
and now I write books. I'm still writing screenplays, but also writing books. And it's a very different landscape, but I think it helps. I spent a very long time writing screenplays and learning that methodology. Um, but I've always been an avid reader since, like most of us, like since I was a small child.
Mm-hmm.
So, because there's a difference between the two. And yeah, so
What is it
I
that you,
mean, I didn't really answer your question, but um it just I don't know. There's the thing in Hollywood, like I think you just get older and you get tired of like trying to do it somebody else's way. So it was just like, I'm just gonna write my own books. So yeah. So.
And so what is it about a screenplay or being a screenwriter that was attractive to you? How did you kind of go, because poetry to screenwriting to me seems like a big jump. And I know we have some poets here on the call
Yeah,
today.
I mean, it can be. We've, my family, like I am in, just outside of Dallas. I'm from Dallas. And so football is huge. If you're a football fan and you know this, if there's any football people, I'm not, but you know, I'm surrounded by football people. So there are the families that are very sports oriented, and then there are families like mine who are very movie
Mhm.
oriented. And it's just how we connect through movies, through the feeling that's portrayed in the film. It's just how I grew up learning to connect with the family. And then also being Gen X, of just living with the television on all the time. So I just learned to, like, we were learning to actually like tell jokes to each other just based off of watching All in the Family,
Yeah.
or, you know, any of the TV shows, right? So that always drew me. Like, I worked for a while in the theater, and then we all went to LA, and I got a job on a TV show, and um, then it just kind of went from there. Like, I just loved being surrounded, and I loved the mystery and everything behind the filmmaking, and using that as a medium to tell a story. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, my love is just to write, regardless. Poetry is very succinct. You can have, of course, a very long poem, but poetry is conveying a feeling through very few words, right? And then screenwriting is like the next step, is being descriptive in very few words. And then books are just like verbose, this is what we think, but they're actually edited quite a bit. So
There
yeah.
are there certain books that lend better to being a screenplay?
I think I've read books that I can tell the person might have been a screenwriter, because they don't dive so much into, okay, so like books are your character is internal. So we're like, they're internally motivated, their goal is internal, we're listening to everything they say, or everything they're thinking of what they want, right? We can see inside their head because they're
Mhm.
telling us all their thoughts, and we're seeing their motivation, right? In film, it's the opposite. It has to be an extrinsic goal. So there, we're seeing what's motivating them to get where they want. We're not hearing really what's in their head. We have to see what's in their head. I forgot where I was going with that.
That's like I had asked, are there particular genres of books that work better
Oh,
for screenplays?
right. Not some. I don't know about genre so much. But there are books that I think you can tell that it was a screenwriter, like uh because it's very like Dan Brown. Okay. So like I've read some of his work. It's very clean. It's like you can see it more than you're hearing what's in the character's head. You're seeing him go from place to place to place. It's more of descriptive. Like the minute I opened it, it was almost like it would be so easy to take it and just like eliminate like 50 words here and there, and you've got a screenplay. Like, you don't have to like figure out what the characters, how to make their internal goal extrinsic. Like, how do we make this internal goal of they want to be in love? How do we make that visual and very succinct, right? So that's the struggle, I think. There are people who are very good at adaptation. Um,
I just want to clarify, in a Dan Brown book, is he
mm,
telling us, he's giving us a lot of words that explain what the visuals are
yeah,
that he wants
we're
us.
just seeing it. It's like the guy runs to the next door. The door opens. He runs inside. He sees this. He
Gotcha.
sees that. So that's like, and it's there's not like he runs into the room. It was smoky, And, there were people hidden in the fog and he couldn't see them and he was worried that this might be the wrong thing and la la la. You see how we start to get
Yeah.
inside, right? That's horrible, like my description just there,
So,
but
Dan
it's on
keeps
the
it at a
fly.
Dan keeps it at a higher level with less
Yeah,
detail. Yeah.
it's just,
Okay.
yeah, exactly. So it's much less detail. And I've talked to other writers who have
Mhm.
done that. They're successful, like mid-list authors, but they were screenwriters. It seems like people like age up into writing novels if they've been screenwriters. And so then they talk about how they may not be so descriptive in the books, but
Mhm.
it's
There
still.
was a gentleman here in St. Louis whose book was picked up by Kevin Bacon and somebody else, forget the other person. And it always made me wonder about the process, because they got a hold of his book and it was an actual true story about something that had happened to that caused his son's death and in college. And they were going to then turn it into a screenplay. Can you kind of walk us through what those steps would have been if so they just accidentally found his book or somebody sent it to them or something?
No,
Um,
I
what
yeah.
would they have seen in that book that would have said, oh yeah, this would make a great movie?
Well, I think like actors like that, especially the ones Reese Witherspoon, all these people who have their own production companies, are looking for um, characters they want to play. They're always looking for a dynamic, a different character that they want to play than the things that they typically get offered um, from screenwriters who just see them pegged as, Kevin Bacon, the dancer, or Reese Witherspoon, America's sweetheart type of girl, and they want to play something more dynamic,
Mhm.
other than just making more money. But I think they're looking for those type of like different dynamic characters. They're also looking at story. Is
Yeah,
this a compelling story?
this one had a strong statement of, well, he died because of a pharmaceutical
Mm,
mistake in
mhm.
a hospital. And my understanding was that they were picking up on that kind of social advocacy of, we need to monitor hospitals more. And
Right.
that's really what they were going after there.
Yeah.
But because it was not the first time that it had happened.
Hmm.
But
Mm.
so if I'm a writer, how do I move from being a writer into either being a screenwriter or having my book picked up by someone who's going to turn it into a movie or a sitcom, or what does that path look like?
So traditional publishing, the way that I've seen it work and what I've studied and read is, and I learned from other writers, is sometimes these, big name people, big famous people have a first look or an option deal going on with the publisher. So that's in traditional publishing, obviously. So that's where you get things like uh, Reese's Book Club, Oprah's Book Club, these book clubs where they do want to promote the writer, but there's an agreement that takes place. I don't really know the logistics about it, although I know that it's been printed. I read it recently about like how it works. Um, so that's through traditional publishing, even though you think that people get noticed like that because of like some big marketing thing, but that's not through the marketing. It's these writers and sometimes Hollywood studios have first look options with the publishers. So that is sometimes worked into the agreement when people sign with the publisher.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh yeah, and also they want an option. We have an option deal with such and such a studio and blah blah blah. For the indie publisher, it's more work. It's always more work, right? Like, uh, yeah, I also have a podcast, so where I'm talking with a lot of independent indie published authors, And it's all marketing. It's like 80% marketing. It always helps if you like have a way in or you know somebody. Sometimes indie producers will reach out and stuff like that, but it all comes down to marketing. It is constant. I'm sure you all know it is all marketing. So if that means like having a website, that means being on social media and building your following, that means like these are getting on like working with other authors to bundle your works together and combine your mailing list. That has been like a really hot thing that's working for authors. You'll see lately even like bigger name authors who were previously indie published, like Karen Fisher and Colleen Hoover. They're like friends, and now they're kind of like working together to get their other friends noticed and push out their own books together. Um, that's a really popular thing to do, and that gets you noticed. But it's because I've been so submerged in the world of social media marketing lately, just because my own stuff and everything that I'm doing. It is a lot of like just reaching out and commenting and getting to know other authors, and like whether that's on X. I know people are moving away from that. There's a lot of things on threads right now. There's a hashtag book threads where people are on there going, "Hey, I want to follow other authors. I'm a publisher. I'm an editor. I'm a writer. Let's get to know each other." All of that sort of thing. So there's a lot of that, and it's a big, big, heavy push. But get out there, guest on podcast, just be heard. Get out there, get your
I had
stuff
a
heard.
conversation once with a agent from Wiley and Sons,
Mm-hmm.
and he was talking about how he'll go out and he'll watch Wiley and Sons is nonfiction
Mm-hmm.
mostly for business. And so he'll go out and he'll watch LinkedIn and he'll watch Facebook, and he'll start noticing those authors who have huge followings. He'll start following them. And as they get into the tens of thousands of followers, that's when he comes in and goes, "Hey, let's have a conversation." And they want you to come now with that following.
Yeah.
And so because that's easier for them to make money if you've got that following.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really kind of everything now. Like there are actors who've gotten their first big breakout roles because of the following they had.
Mhm.
There are filmmakers, screenwriters. It's huge. Like we all stay connected. Anytime you get any kind of like you win a contest, you get published. Like maybe you published an article or a blog or whatever. You hammer it, throw it out there, and just go, "Hey, here's this. Read this. Blah blah blah." Instead of like, it's not how people like make the mistake of just like submitting unsolicited work. You want to get noticed. This is a better way of getting noticed instead of like pushing your work directly on an agent or a manager or whoever, is to get noticed in this other route by just building your following. Listen, it's a I'm not great at it. To me, it's just like, oh my God, I have to do that again. Oh,
Well, and that's curious because so if is there such a thing as an internship for screenwriting? If if you just if and maybe you don't have that experience that you really want to learn how to be a screenwriter,
Hmm. So
how do
the
you do
biggest
that?
way I would say to do that is read scripts. This is the thing that everybody tells you. The way I started doing it was I binged TV shows and I binged movies. So there'd be like, whatever. You sit down, USA Network or whatever on a Saturday, and I would just watch movies all day. They'd play them just one after the other, after the other, after the other, and you'll pick up the rhythm to it. Ding, 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 ding. And then I just started like that. I was like, okay, and then they have a problem and they get da, 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 da. I would start there and not so much with the math behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Create your story first, like pick up the rhythm. You're watching movies, or you're binging a TV show over and over and over. You take your story and put it in that. in that kind of formula feel, and then just go from there. But don't get into the like, okay, we need to know what happens or the theme by page 3, and there can't be too much text on page 1, and there can't, it's then the first turn is at page 30, and then there's an arc, and then there's a whatever. If you I would say lean more into the intuitive aspect before you get into the math, because the intuitive is going to put your heart in the work, and that is ultimately what will get you noticed. That's probably why Bacon picked up that book, because it was the heart in it
Yeah.
and not the formula. And Hollywood loves the formula. So that's why you see the same Marvel film over and over
Like,
and over and
like
over
on
and over.
Disney, you always know some little animal's gonna die in the beginning.
Right. Yeah. So you just like brace yourself. Like
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I can't watch that yet. I know
Yeah.
it's gonna be sad.
Bambi's gonna lose his mama. I know. Here it comes. Yeah.
Right.
But speaking of Disney, I know that's a tough one to crack. If you have a children's book and you think it might be great as an animated show, how does that work? Are you familiar with that industry?
Well, animation, I mean, it is it's a, so they all have like, there are different methodologies behind some of them. Like, it's still going to be a screenplay,
Mm-hmm.
but the way that you would go about, like it's still you writing your story,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're just still going to write the story, and then you can go and take a class and learn how the math behind it happens, right? But the way ultimately that you're going to do this several times until you really, nobody ever perfects screenwriting. It's just not going to happen. Like, we're all learning forever and ever.
Mm-hmm.
But is you studios don't take unsolicited work, so that's really important to
Right.
remember. So it's likely that you would get a manager, or I would suggest a manager before don't go for the agent yet. The agent's just going to negotiate. That's what they do. Um, but is to get several pieces under your belt where you feel confident in the way that you're working, and you feel confident that you're able to tell this story, and then get a manager and this is what I want to do. I want to write animation. So you would look for a manager who reps people as an animated.
So would it be a screenwriting manager? What kind of a manager? Okay.
Yeah. But that's the thing. It's like, you're going to look for one whose client roster is people who write animation.
Okay.
Right?
Or whatever your genre happens to be.
Yeah, whatever your genre, because you want them to be somebody who knows about that area, and they know like, oh, so and so at this studio or this one is looking for this kind of work. So this is what I rep. Like, there are ones who maybe they'll have like several writers, but most of them are action, and maybe they've got one drama.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't know. Maybe they're trying to move into drama, but it's always worth talking. If you write action, then you're going to look for an action manager. Sometimes managers are also producers. I would kind of look into just somebody who's a manager, and because that's just going to be more open for you instead of them trying to produce your film.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't know. I
Well,
was thinking about.
I was gonna remind everybody, if you do have questions, type them into the chat and I'll watch over there and make sure we get them answered. So in looking through how you moved from poetry to screenwriting, what was it that you think was key that you talked about how you were actually working on, was it a sitcom or something
No, I wasn't a writer. Let
Uh-huh.
me clarify that. So I got a job on a television show as a painter. And I actually started out as an art department production assistant, which
Mm-hmm.
just means I drove like all day, all the time. And it was before like we really had like it was definitely before iPhones. So yeah, and it just gave me a lot of access and I met a lot of people and stuff like that. I did not know at the time that screenwriting was something that I would do or wanted to do. I was looking at becoming a story analyst. And so eventually I went to work for an agency as an assistant, and then I took a story analysis class at UCLA, and that kind of got me in from that area. And that was freelance work where I would just read stuff and give notes for studios. And the woman who taught the class was like head story analyst for Sony or something. And so I went at it from that way. I, I'd, you know, all my friends were filmmakers and some of them were screenwriters. And I just kind of learned about it from that aspect, in that I just intuitively edited their scripts.
Well, yeah, and you were
Yeah,
immersed in that
right.
whole environment, and
Right. Yes, that's a better way of saying it.
yeah, and so you and which would be a great position, because then you could kind of sit back and go, oh, well, I want to go over there and learn how to do that, or I want to go over there with
Yeah, definitely.
yeah. So
But
the
I will, yeah, I mean, that's the thing of like Hollywood has always been, I was really young at the time, and Hollywood has always been like geared towards the young. But I have begun seeing breakthroughs, like especially during the pandemic and afterward, of older writers being in the writing room. On TV shows operate differently in that they have a room of writers, right? And so now we're having more and more writers over 40, over 50 showing up in the writing room. But prior to that, historically, it wasn't. And that's why I was saying earlier, tend to age out. I've seen a lot of people who were screenwriters from my age, when you were younger, who are now writing books, you know, and they just like it better. It doesn't involve like, especially if you're indie published, right? You're not answering to a boss. Well, your audience is your boss, right? But ultimately, but you're not having to like, oh, okay, it has to look like this, it has to feel like this. They're only buying this, you know, whatever. You can just think your writers. You know, writers want to see this character do something, you know. I know there's the whole thing about like writing a book, it takes, you know, your 6 months, 2 years, whatever. Your reader reads it in a day and they're just like, okay, what's next? It's like, well, thanks a lot. It's gonna be a minute.
so
So
I know we've bounced around from
yeah.
writer's block to screenwriting, and which there is a connecting point in there somewhere. But if you were to give us some words of wisdom as to, let's talk about the writer's block, what overall message do you want us to walk away with today with regards to writer's block?
I think the biggest thing is that when you feel that resistance, um, it's really uncomfortable, and you need to sit with that discomfort and move, push yourself through it. So it's not a sign for you to get up and walk away and just go, oh, well, maybe I need a break. Just sit there and feel through it, because that is the process. That discomfort is the process.
It's
So
part
it's
of that
not easy.
process. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not easy. And anyone who tells you that it is, you know,
Mhm.
I mean, I read a lot, and now I read even more because, like I said, now I have a podcast. I'm interviewing writers. Now I'm reading even more stuff, and not their stuff, but other things that I've read. You can tell where they're just, it's either there's no heart in it because they're just like writing really fast to get away and avoid the resistance. Resistance is the story that you need to tell. That discomfort is it's acknowledgeable. I mean, it's fear, and that's okay. It's okay, because being afraid is part of the process. But
Which is a good life lesson too. Feel the
mhm,
fear and just walk through it.
yeah, I see it as a sign of like, oh, okay, I need to do that.
Yeah.
So
That's the direction I need to go. Yeah.
yeah, I've tried to change my perspective where it was like, I get kind of excited, like, oh my God, oh, I'm afraid of that. Okay, here we go. It's kind of like the top of the
Mhm.
roller coaster. Oh my God, I can't get out of the car now. Here I am.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hold on. Here we go. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that would be it. The discomfort and the fear that's the process. So it's not
And
some
then
other
from
way.
the perspective of screenwriting, what would be a takeaway for us today that if that is something we want to look into or move
Mhm,
towards, what
mhm.
might be our first step?
I would think, if you have a story to tell that story, and then learn how to do. Excuse me, and you'll find it in different. Try all the way. Like try watching your favorite movie over and over again. Why do you like that movie so much? And
Mhm.
in that movie, what is your favorite part, and why is that your favorite part? And that's your story. That it's trying to tell you that you have a story in that you want to tell also. And
Mm.
then I took so many courses, but it was really to build my community. And I did. Like, I know a lot of writers. And from that, you make some friends and some colleagues, and you can write together and you can work together. You can read each other's work. Takes a lot of notes. And then yeah, like I said, take classes. And I went through one of the programs at UCLA, and they have everything online now. It was in
Awesome.
person, and then
Yeah.
pandemic happened. So, but
So
yeah,
uh, do studios, whether it's movie or TV, do they actually like do a wanted ad, need a screenwriter? I mean,
no,
or no, okay.
no.
It's who you know. Yeah. Another
It's
writer will say, I heard so-and-so's looking for a something, something.
Yeah, and there are all those like once you build your community and you can get deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole, and there's sites, there are places like the Script Lab where you can download scripts and read them. That's another big recommend is that you read the scripts so you can see how it's laid out. Um, Read the bad ones, but read the really good ones and then look at the difference. Because you'll learn from both. And yeah, no, that's really where it's like you learn to do it, and then you get manager, and then the manager is the one who hears about like, oh, okay, so and so's looking for this, this actor is looking for this kind of project, this studio is looking for this and that. It's really, I, I'm not a manager, but it's kind of like the vehicle, like the actor is sometimes the vehicle that gets it made. A studio is not, it's really better to have somebody, there's going to be somebody attached,
Yeah.
right? So and some management companies have like everybody in house, they have like, they also have their actor, their drama, their theatrical section, and they've got their literary section, and they've got and they'll kind of like try to package it. But I know there was like some real like some pushback on that because it was isolating and it was kind of turning management companies into a production. So, and that's not okay. So, I mean, in my opinion, but I think others do because I don't know. There was some legality behind it. So that
Yeah.
might be something you
Well,
want
and
to
I know
follow up
one
on.
thing,
Don't take my word for it.
well, and I know one thing we will do is when we follow up and send the recording out to everyone, we'll make sure that we have your contact information in there.
Yeah.
I grabbed one URL, Script Lab. Is that a .com?
Yeah, it's here
I was gonna say, we can look it up on this end and we'll include that also. As
I
we,
think it's .com, but that's the name of it, the Script
yeah,
Lab. So yeah, you can get
find that.
lots of script downloads there. Um, yeah.
Oh, Lisa found it. There you go. Thank you. Yeah. And I just want to thank you so much. This is a new topic for us, so I greatly appreciate it. And
Sure.
if anyone has any additional questions, we'll have Lisa's contact information in the follow-up email. I greatly appreciate all of our guests today. And Lisa, thank you so much for being our expert today. We will meet
I'm an
again in
expert.
January. Yes, yeah. We only invite the experts. We'll meet again in January. Let's see, what day is it? January 11th. We will be talking with Alea Harris. She is a speaker trainer coach out of, I believe, the Florida area, but it looks like our topic will be breaking out of the sea of sameness with the power of storytelling. So storytelling is a big topic lately, you know, all the story brand and all of that. So we will be talking with her on January 11th, 11:30, same time, same place. Lisa, thank you so much for being here. And
Thank you for
everybody,
having me.
enjoy your holidays. We'll see you in the new year. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.
Uh-huh.
Bye.